everybody. Thanks so much for joining today. We're excited to see faces both on Zoom and in person. We're really excited. First of all, we just want to thank STG for hosting and not only food, but the venue. So we're grateful that we can all be here gathered and get to meet some new faces. But then secondly, we are so excited to hear from Neal. He is just a wealth of knowledge. So just a little bit of a background on him. He has been working at STG for 10 years, 4 years managing. He is the only UX UI designer for the State Board of Education, and he is excited to share what he's learned across the years and help us decode UX talent and even go through a few live portfolio sessions. So we have a lot to hear from him, and it's going to be super exciting. So I'm going to pass it on to him.
Thank you. I can't tell you guys how much it means to me that you came. The Product Hive community has just been something that I've always loved. I've come to these things over the years. I've been to front a couple of times, and wow, we have such a powerful community here. And I feel like it's in events like these where we're getting together and we're helping each other, hopefully, that we are able to really make big differences for our clients. Okay, so first of all, I would like to present my time timer. If you are a UX designer or just anything in product, you probably know what this is. And you probably don't have one, so this is I'm going to use this to keep track of my time today. All right, here we go. This is very important to me that I get you back to your clients on time. Decoding UX talent. This is something I've been passionate about for a really long time. I love helping people to break into the field. I love helping them to learn how to level up. And I also really, really love interviewing and teaching how to interview. And I've done this with dozens and dozens of our own people because us moving from one job to another is very important to us. So that's an important consulting skill, as we call it. So I am happy to share a couple of things with you, and I hope I can teach you something today. So you know the story. Boy meets girl, or girl meets boy, or boy meets boy, or girl meets girl, or whatever you prefer. But the boy doesn't fall for her because, in short, he's an idiot. He pursues someone who's clearly not right for him, or he goes after some kind of dream that isn't right for him either. If only he would wake up. Man, the answer's right there, waiting with open arms, ready to love him. Thankfully, in the stories that we love the most, redemption always comes. The boy opens up his eyes, he sees the girl as if for the first time, and discovers that she is the one. And then finally, in the stories that we love, I love this. In a moment of blissful awareness, he holds her and whispers fervently, "It was you all along." Okay, so enough of that. Now, the application for us. We are all idiots. There are a lot of not just individuals who are idiots, probably including myself, but also companies who are idiots. And they are idiots because they don't know how to look for the one who will make them happy. They have a lot of false conceptions. They have a lot of misunderstandings about what they need in a product designer. And it blinds them to some really exciting discoveries. For example, shooting down somebody's case study just because they didn't code it themselves. I hate that one. Another one would be shooting down a case study because it came to them as a PDF. I hate that one too, but I'll talk about why in just a second. Okay. The good news is that UX talent is out there, and I've already talked to many of you who are very talented, and it's often a lot closer than you think. The trick is to recognize them for the diamond in the rough that they are. And you also need to be willing to tend some sacred cows. We'll talk about that also. So, how do you get to your "it was you all along" moment? Let me be your training pants. I'm sorry, guys. I know this is super cheesy, but anyway, I had you looking, so that's good. I just got your attention. All right, here's the agenda for today. We're going to cover 3 principles. I call them the you all along principles for finding UX talent. And I think for finding talent in general. Then we're going to tip some sacred UX talent cows. We're going to show you what we did at STG to be able to work towards a workable UX talent interview template. And we'll kind of show you some of that process. I know that you all love cases because of your work. I'm also going to share with you what I call the ultimate UX talent analysis guide. We're going to use that guide to do some live case study reviews. And thanks in advance to, I believe that Stone is on the call. Thank you so much for volunteering. It takes so much courage to volunteer to have a community look at your work. And then also a friend of mine named Sudipta Saha, who I work with at the State Board of Education. She is going to represent the junior designers of the world for us today. Okay, so let's dive in. The you all along principles. Principle number 1, they come from anywhere. You will, of course, recognize this as Anton Ego. I don't know if you know this or not, but I really like cartoons and animated movies, so get used to it. This, of course, is from Ratatouille, and Anton is a food critic. He has his world turned upside down when he realizes that his excellent meal was prepared by a rat. And he does a lot of soul searching, and he finally concludes that not everyone can become a great artist, but great art can come from anywhere. UX designers do. They can and do come from anywhere and everywhere, and I've seen it. Everything that I'm about to show you are things that I have actually seen. Visual designers, obviously, and that includes probably one of the most common for a UX designer, and that would include people who are doing print design, interior design, industrial, digital, illustration, animation. I've seen good designers come from all those backgrounds. And then multimedia production, so video production and video game production is another interesting little segment. Front-end coding and development, software engineering, marketing, psychology, that's a really good one. Architecture, I've talked to a couple of really good architects who transitioned to UX design. English majors, business and functional analysts, and project managers. That obviously seems a little bit more of an easier jump. And of course, the obvious match would be someone who has worked on products with an active UX title for several years. But that line of thinking frequently leads us away from those diamonds in the rough. Okay. Question time. I want to make this a little bit more interactive. Where have you seen good UX designers come from? And this could be yourself. You could be talking about yourself. So let's start with that, and then I'll ask you the follow-up question. In what ways do those anywheres prepare you for career UX? What do you think? Yeah, Christian, right?
Yes.
Cool.
I come from urban planning, city planning, so like architecture, but
No way.
yeah, everybody, and it's kind of I mean UX now, but on top of that, it was like right after that was like long news training. So UX, right? If you have different series, especially on that day building deals, it's fine. But in City Street, they're wrong with this, so that's gonna be like that for years. People want that to happen. So that cut from that was long.
I love that.
And so like think about all things first.
Urban planning. Yeah. Good job, Christian. I love that. Okay. And then, well, let me, yeah, like you talked a little bit about how did that prepare you for UX?
Also just have to think about a lot of things first. Like, think about things that a lot of people kind of pass over. So like ADA stuff, right? How do you get people on the city streets who need to be able to get up the curb but just can't for some reason? Yeah. Think about that. Maybe it's wrong. It's fine. But what if you can't do that, right? Or what if you're having a little fun and you can't use your fingers? How do you use your
Right,
hands
yeah.
or your face? What do you want to do? So we kind of have to just think about stuff like that. And when you think about it like that, it makes you realize, oh man, there's stuff that exists that maybe we pass over a lot, and there's no actually a big impact that you can do. For sure.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, design is design. There's Marcin Tretter, I believe his name is. He was the CEO for UXPin. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, I apologize if you're uncomfortable listening. He said that design happens whether you plan for it or not. And if you don't plan for the design, it's just going to get out of control. So if you come from a design background, that definitely helps. Okay, are there any others? I'd love to hear any others. Yeah?
Waiting tables and finance.
Waiting tables. That is awesome. How did that prepare you for a career in UX?
Well, first and foremost, I remember the first time I had a table at like 12, which was like out of the ordinary. I remember just being very tough. But at the end of the day, I always kind of viewed every single person at a smaller table as, oh, these are my friends coming out to eat. I'm going to give them the best experience that they can have. And bigger tables, I just was going to segue that same mindset. And for me, it was all about the people that came in. It was their time. It wasn't me trying to make a lot of money in sales. It was their time. And then in college, I got my thought was finance, and I worked waiting tables all through that. And I got finance, I was like, okay, I got a job over here at community.
Okay.
And started doing interviewing people. I created a script, just 10 simple questions, and I would ask them a lot of them, just like, what do you love about your job? What do you see yourself in 5 years? What do you dislike most about your job? And I roughly did a case study, I guess, and didn't know about what that job looked like. And I was like, yeah, no. I was like, be creative and thinking outside the box, like finance is probably not everything. And then I started finding opportunities for jobs that allowed me to be able to put the user first.
Mm-hmm.
I learned that there were, this is a long time ago, I guess like 10, 15 years ago. So I didn't think UX really wasn't a big thing, I guess then. But I knew that I wanted to be able to great experiences with people. Yeah. That's what I love.
That's great. And a couple of those questions that you ask are questions that we ask like at the beginning of a design sprint, like where do you want to be in 5 years? And then you kind of talk about the current state too. That's great. Oh my gosh, that's super interesting. You really can turn a lot of cool stuff into a career in UX design. I think it's important, however, that you focus on the thought process. We'll get to that in a second. Okay, speaking of which, wow, literally get to it in a second. Thought process reigns supreme. This is principle number 2. This is Sarah Duty. We love Sarah Duty here, and us UXers here at STG. She's local actually. She's here from Salt Lake, and she wrote this amazing, this killer article with Design Shop founder Dan Macarello called "The UX of Hiring for UX Positions." I consider this the Bible for hiring for UX positions. It is awesome. Seriously, you have no business hiring UX designers until you read this. Anyway, she's quoting Jess Brown here, who's the director of UX at Vice Media, and she says, if we just look at background, we may miss out on great thinkers in UX. Too often, when we are thumbing through resumes, we may over-obsess on background. While years and types of experience are important considerations, it means little if they aren't a talented design thinker. So don't over-obsess. Instead, figure out the way that a designer thinks. And remember that this all-important X factor almost never comes out on a resume. Eliciting this information from candidates requires digging, especially digging into their, of course, case studies. Good for you, gun knowledge. This is my brother. He is, I hope you'll forgive me for quoting a family member, but he is the VP of training for the city of San Antonio. And what he said that he likes, what he considers to be his most impressive candidates, are those who speak in terms of stories. And specifically, he asks them these questions. What problems were you seeking to help your employer overcome? Does that sound like problem-based to anyone? What solutions did you present, and how did you arrive at those solutions? And then finally, what were the results of those solutions for your employer? Or if you're a UX designer, what were the outcomes from your outputs? Number 3, Real skills are indispensable. This is Seth Godin. I'm sure many of you know who that is. He's a wonderful writer, awesome author. Anyway, he wrote an outstanding article called Let's Stop Calling Them Soft Skills. And this is what he had to say about that. Let's call them real skills. Yes, they're interpersonal skills, leadership skills, the skills of charisma and diligence and contribution. But these modifiers, while accurate, somehow edge them away from the vocational skills. So let's uncomfortably call them real skills instead. Real because they work, because they're at the heart of what we need today. So I'm going to make it official. He called it uncomfortably real. I'm just going to make it official. Soft skills are now real skills, so let it be written, said, and done. Okay, boom. How do I hear soft skills? All right. This is again from Sarah Doody and Dan Macarone. Hire people, not skill sets. Hire people, not skill sets. In my experience, real skills are not merely the difference between a good designer and a great one. They're the difference between someone who can do UX design and someone who can't. It's that important. Okay, so here then are, next slide. Here are a few skills that I consider indispensable for designers. And this is the big question that I have for you. If you are looking at case studies, are you looking for real skills? Do you see that embedded in there, or are you paying attention to just the way they do UX design? Which, of course, includes real skills. Okay, catch 22. First one, obviously, is leadership. In my mind, UX design and leadership are the exact same thing. UX designers are generals. We're not foot soldiers. We don't sit around waiting for neat, orderly instructions. We dive right in. We figure things out. We don't act independently, but man, oh man, do we figure things out. If you're interviewing someone who's an obvious order taker, take a hard pass. Flexibility. This is Kenny Rogers, of course. Kenny Rogers said it best when he said, you gotta know when to hold them, but know when to fold them. Product design requires a lot of give and take, does it not? And you need to know you need someone, who knows when to fight tooth and nail and when to humbly relent. We need to look for that in the case study. The extra mile mindset. We are the ultimate hard workers and self-starters. Solid products require endless amounts of diligence, even if doing so means stepping outside of our set job descriptions. In other words, UX designers are the type who will stick around afterwards to mop the floor if they feel like that would help them to come understand the user better. I firmly believe that. I'm probably going to stick around after. Okay, next up, empathy. The heart of UX design is empathy with users and with all of the product teams. And I think that's an important modifier. You need to find someone who is not just advocating for users, but is also seeking to understand the entire Scrum team. Acquiring empathy requires a host of real skills, including listening, setting each other at ease, kindness, patience, all of that good stuff. Thirst for learning. Oh my gosh, anyone know what this is from? UHF. Yay, there you go, UHF. Good on you. Yes, in this constantly evolving field, those who aren't keeping pace quickly fall behind. For example, what are we doing to leverage AI as part of our workflow? What are we doing to understand digital transformation and what UX can do in that arena? Those who are keeping pace quickly fall behind, and no UX designer knows all that they need to know. But no UX designer ever stops trying and never rests on their laurels. This again is from the UX Hiring Bible. That's what I'm going to call that article from now on. Attitude is so important to new UX designers, and having a beginner's mind, I like that verbiage, a beginner's mind coming into a problem can be an asset. Storytelling. I bet this is one that you may not have thought of. In story, and the question I'd ask is it important for UX designers? And I would say absolutely. It isn't enough to collect quality data. We have to synthesize and share that data with other people. And we have to do it in an engaging and emotional way. Otherwise, we'll never be able to help our stakeholders to have the same empathy that we have for our users. So you need to be looking for that in your portfolios as well and in the case studies. Question time. What other real skills would you add to this list that I haven't mentioned? Any thoughts? Yeah.
Customer service.
Oh, okay. What do you mean?
You want to make sure that when you have conversations with your customers, that you feel like you actually show that empathy and you actually care for them as well. In the past, like making phone calls, using customer service, you want to make sure that you treat them like a team, like a guest.
Yeah.
And that makes it also very comfortable for them to actually provide some feedback without feeling the pressure like this is an interrogation. It's more of a conversation trying to understand what the user.
Oh, that's great. I'm so glad you said that because so much of what we do is about showing, explaining what we're going to provide, we have to do that a lot as UX designers, and then actually delivering on that promise. And I think that's a really important aspect of customer service. Yeah, great one. Others? Yeah.
Being genuine.
Being genuine. Okay, why is that important?
That's important because when you're having any type of interaction, especially say from a user interview, you're normally getting somebody who hasn't really had that experience before, and
Yeah.
you want to be able to really touch base on level with them, where they are, where those problems that they experience. Why are those problems? You would be able to be like that low-tech mindset that's in model of why. You only get through so many whys to really genuine with the person. Can you immediately tell that? It's just like when you're on the phone with somebody, you can tell whether or not the person on the other line is actually smiling.
That's so true. Yeah, boy, someone can tell in a generative user interview if you are reading from the "I'm trying to set you lead" script. You know? So yeah, I agree. That's an important one. Okay, good stuff, guys. So time to tip some cows here, shall we? In order to find the diamonds in the rough, this is necessary. I asked these 3 questions on the general channel, and I think 1 or 2 of you have actually responded, so thank you so much for that. I would like to first start with what you shared, and then I'll give my 2 cents. Do case studies have to be formatted in a particular way? And I apologize, this is my summation. This is me acting as AI, so it may not be a very good summary, so take it with a grain of salt. But the group's consensus did seem to be that you are doing some cow tipping already. It's no. It doesn't have to be formatted in a particular way, but they need to tell a clear, compelling story. The story itself could follow some kind of format, but other than that, it doesn't need to follow like a preset kind of format. This is really important for you to know, however, what we've seen with, I would say, most of STG clients, they still prefer to have the long form scroller, and I'll show that to you in a minute. I'm sure you know what I'm already talking about though. So my 2 cents is yes and no. There's the long form scroller on the left, the designer for Uber, and I think this is such a good case study. It does an amazing job. I would totally hire a Simon Pan. Anyway, the long form scroller versus the Serendipity approach. I'll tell you what Serendipity around here. The long form scroller is, of course, you keep scrolling as you see the whole thing. You get a mix of images and illustrations. And then the Serendipity approach is a page-by-page approach that you make with either PowerPoint or just as a PDF. That's the 2 basic approaches. And as I mentioned, there are some advantages to the long-form scroller. It's what most people still expect. And if you throw a curveball at them, you'll get in trouble. I have both by the way, the Serendipity approach is one of my slides from my case study. I have gotten my current job, and I have lost jobs with this thing. So sometimes format does matter. That being said, what really matters is good storytelling. And in my humble opinion, the Serendipity approach tells better stories. What I would recommend would be to have a long form scrolling kind of case study for your online portfolio. And then once you get the job, once you get the job interview, then show something like a serendipity approach during the interview. It's a much easier way to talk about it in person. Number two, does it have to be a real case study? And I think we all by this. The group consensus was no, but it helps. It's less appropriate to use a fake case study the more senior you are. And I actually really like the word not real as opposed to fake. Because fake feels like less value in it. Not real says there is some value in it, just isn't real. And I'll talk about that in just a second here. There are ways also for junior designers to get real. A really interesting suggestion was brought up when I had this conversation online that junior designers can start their own company. That way they can build the product exactly as they want. And man, oh man, what a great way to build a case study. I think that's a good idea. So here's my 2 cents. It depends on the type of reality we're talking about here. And there's 3 different kinds: not real, non-ideal real, and ideal real. And I'd really like to turn them into a tongue twister. Here's the not real, and this is my friend Sadipta that I talked about. She created a not real product, but with real functionality, and then she applied real technique to it. That would be the pretend clients or scenarios, and of course student projects. I consider student projects not real because even though they are doing something for a real client most of the time, it's a pretty set up way of dealing with that client. It's a template. And if you've looked at the case studies from people from the boot camps, the first one that they produce usually kind of templatized. So I would encourage you to, if you come from a boot camp, get to a pro bono project or something similar as quickly as you can. Okay. And this particular one, I would say though, if you're going to be not real, you have to at least be transparent about the fact. Like, I did this as part of my boot camp. Like, tell me that. I don't want to have to discover, it's usually pretty easy. Show me that you're innovating. Show me that you're going outside of that cookie cutter way of thinking. And then finally, senior designers don't do this. I've never seen it happen, but as soon as it does, right on the back of the head. In a very kind and loving and jovial way. Okay. The non-ideal real. Helping a friend with a startup is kind of a non-ideal real. It's a real situation. Internships can be ideal real, but sometimes they're not ideal real, depending on what they had you do. The real life scenario. This would be someone who fixes up the Netflix website without Netflix ever knowing about it. I'm sure you've seen something like that as well. And then finally, NDA scenarios. Sometimes because of your non-disclosure agreement, you have to be careful about how you present yourself, so you change like the names and the places and the faces and things like that. So in these, I would say that you're going to get an increased chance of real skills and an increased chance of innovation in the thought process, but you still need to be a little bit more careful. And finally, we got the ideal real. These would be established companies. These would be long-term-ish kind of projects, although I have seen plenty of good case studies built from something that was worked on for just a couple of days. And then finally, to me, it doesn't matter if it's pro bono or paid. What matters to me is, once again, how you think, did you develop real skills? So, the ideal reels, I'd say there's a much stronger chance that there are going to be some real skills being used in there. There's going to be a stronger chance of innovation. However, neither is guaranteed, so you still got to do your due diligence and try not to skim the case study too much. Although if you're skimming it a lot, that's probably not very good storytelling because it's too long or something. How many case studies does a candidate need? This generated some really interesting responses. The group consensus was, and I thought again this is very interesting, none. If I can see evidence of good design in other ways. I thought that was pretty amazing that people thought that. Thank goodness that many of you thought that, because I got my first UX gig without a traditional case study. I don't know, I might have stacked the wireframes and somehow that worked. I think I was able to slap a lot of lipstick on that thing somehow. I don't know, I wish I would have recorded that interview. If you did mention a number, however, in that conversation, the average was about 2. That's not son. So I thought that was interesting. Here's my 2 cents. I say 1. You need to have at least 1. And if you do have just 1, it needs to be really, really good. And here's why I say that. I want to know that you're a good storyteller. And this is about one of the best ways that I can tell you can tell good stories. It isn't enough in UX design to be able to just do your job. You have to do your job and then share it and help other people to come along to your way of thinking. But you also need to be humble. You also need to concede when it is necessary. 3, I have kind of discovered as the sweet spot. Shows me you've got a lot of experience, but it doesn't dilute your impact. And then after that, it kind of tends to be, for me, diminishing returns. If you get 4 or 5 in there, I start to lose the thread of your thinking, of the way you approach problems, because you're doing so many different things. It doesn't tell quite as compelling a story. Right? Okay, so this is what we did at STG to be able to approach a master UX interview template. And you'll see how we kind of try to get around to focusing more on thought process and real skills throughout this. All right, so a little bit about how we evolved the template first here. As a UX practice manager at STG, I did that. So during my time at STG, I did that for about 7 years, and I've been doing my current one for about 2.5, 3 or so. Anyway, when I was a UX practice manager, I interviewed just tons of UX candidates. And my practice leads and I that were doing this, we quickly learned what techniques worked and what didn't for recognizing the gem. And we continue to evolve this template. So this is a living, breathing document. But the current version is way more rigorous and way more incisive. So here's what we did to get more focus on understanding thought process and real skills. But first of all, our embarrassing old version, we would spend the first 45 to 50 minutes of the 1-hour interview just kind of doing a UX question and answer session, and then 10 to 15 minutes doing the actual case study review. We had, as part of this big part of the conversation, preset questions that test UX design understanding. And what the main problem was with these questions was, it didn't get them talking about stories. We didn't know if they were applying these things in real life situations. So an example of a question is, how would you explain your UX process? Or how do you document your design ideas and decisions? We asked just very few questions about real skills, but that's not where the emphasis was at all. We had this very structured, is it un or inflexible? It didn't give me a little squiggly red line. So anyway, structured inflexible question script. And we just encouraged them to do very little storytelling. As a result, we got the textbook answers. And we get very similar answers from junior designers and from senior designers, and that's not on them, that's on us. We were asking terrible questions. There was also no association between answers and the case studies. We didn't have context for how they were applying their knowledge, or if they were applying it at all. This is what the old template used to look like. You can see that we've got it color-coded for various categories, but we actually kind of kept the category idea, and I'll come back to that. We had sort of a purpose of the question thing, and we always strayed from the purpose. Then we had our set questions that we always asked in that same order. The candidate would provide their answer, and then the last one you can kind of see is a grading kind of scale. We did something like a Likert scale from 1 to 5, where 1 was junior, 3 was mid, and 5 was senior. And what we were looking for was, is it the kind of answer that a junior person, a mid person, or a senior person would give? And we would have lots of seniors who would give junior kind of answers, and vice versa. So we actually kind of like that, and we've stuck with that going forward. The new version of the thing, 45 to 50 minutes of case study review. The whole darn thing is about their case studies. Oh, that fixed so much. And then about 10 to 15 minutes at the end, we kind of save for follow-up questions. These follow-up questions help us to flesh out our understanding in areas where we were a little bit fuzzy. Okay.
How long do you have more cases?
It's a couple of years. Change takes time, especially because I had to wait. I had to get a ton of my ear there. All right. Let's see. Let me show you a little bit more about that here. We would also, instead of doing the inflexible questions, that is a new word, we would ask heuristic questions to help to flesh out our understanding in each one of these categories. Oh yeah, I did, okay. This is an example of some of the categories: research, collaboration, documentation. These are the broad areas of knowledge which we desire to have about our candidates. And we would ask heuristic questions to make sure we understand them for each of these areas. So an example would be something like, how did you use these wireframes to align stakeholders with user needs? And you can see how a lot of questions could become storytelling questions if you ask it the right way, if you ask it about a specific scenario. Okay. We would also have these kind of preset but non-mandatory questions at the end that we could ask if we looked through our notes and saw, you know what, I don't understand this category too well yet. An example would be, tell me about a time you worked through a difficult problem with a stakeholder if we didn't have enough understanding about collaboration. What did you do to arrive at a successful conclusion? And the results are we got more interviewer flexibility. They could steer the conversation the way they felt that it needed to go. Looking at the case study the whole time, we finally understood their thought process. We finally understood what kind of real skills they were using. We finally had a better understanding of how they're applying their design knowledge in the real world. I'm going to show you just a piece of what we've been doing. I can't give away the fun. So you can see the broad category on the left, process and research. And then we have the same Likert scale that we had before. And then you can see the blank area for notes, and then on the right are just some preset questions that give us ideas that we can ask whatever we want to flesh out our understanding. Okay, we have now come to it. We are going to use this Ultimate UX Talent Analysis Guide to do some live review of some people's portfolios. Or I should say some case studies. Dive right into the case study portion of the portfolio. Are you ready? Are you excited? And I'm excited to have you do this because I want to see how we're able to apply it. And there's the two categories, thought process and nonverbal skills. What I'm going to do is just give you a second. A little bit behind schedule here. How do you, and here's some questions that you can ask of yourself. This isn't something you would ask the interviewee. These are things you would ask of yourself. Do they start by seeking to understand, you know what, I hate reading slides. I just read it and I'll comment on a couple things. Yeah, there's that innovative and adaptable. I want to know that you're not just, you know what design thinking is, and you're just going through the steps, one after the other. You're finding what is appropriate for the stage of research. Here's the PSR format. Some questions for that.
PSR?
Problem, solution, resolution. Question. Their bosses will look at that side. I like, is there evidence of collaboration and meeting facilitation? I think nowadays, that is a way essential skill for a UX designer. I want to know that you know what a lightning decision jam is, or a design sprint, or a lean sprint, and how you can apply those. Okay, here's for the solution space. I want to know that they're humble with the challenges that they face. Here's the result part. And this is the most important and most often skipped portion for so many designers in their case studies. They think that the result is they'll just show like the high fidelity comps of their screens. Yeah. Yeah, sure. By the way, you can share it. Okay, cool. We'll share it again. Is this it? One more back? There you go. And we're going to go back through all of these. We're going to apply it to someone's individual case study. So we'll give you a second look at it. Awesome. Victoria. I like to try to remember names. All right, let's see. Here's the result one. Looking for client quotes, looking for something quantifiable about the results, not just here are the screens. Let me know that you had a 30% conversion increase or something from those screens. Okay, real skills analysis. Here are some questions for that. The effort matters. We talked about that. That one, and that one. I'm just kidding. Okay. Roles matter. Do they play with a wide range of roles on their team? When I say a wide range of roles, I mean, do they pigeonhole themselves to just be the wireframing person or just doing one particular phase of the research? That's a potential red flag. I want to see someone develop a little more depth. Although, you could still probably find that niche. I would say that is a little bit more my observation for the type of UX designers we look at here at STG. We want someone much more well-rounded. And then ideal team player comes from Patrick Lindsay, always booked with the same name. We want people who are hungry, humble, and people smart. Good stories matter. Let's see what I want to hear. Oh, the last question. I want to feel an emotional connection to your material. I want to know that you can convince me through my emotions, because that's how we do it in real life. We need to help our stakeholders to be able to gain an emotional connection with our users. So if you can't do that in your case study, how do I know that you can do it with our stakeholders as well? So think about, okay, let's do the live case study review. We've got like 15 minutes left. I will try to save like about 5 minutes here for questions at the end. We'll do that as well. All right, here is the first one. You bust out your phones. I think that'll probably be most useful if you look at these on your phones. This is for my friend Sudipta Saha. Please keep in mind that she is a junior designer and that I'm actually trying to help her through a few things right now. So she is, look at her from that lens, but I'd still like for you to do so with those questions in mind that I just had you look at. And I'll go back and I'll bring up some of the questions. Okay, so everyone got that one? Let me know if you still need a second to scan. Good, okay. Let's go back. We're going to focus for her on thought process analysis. And if you want me to bring up another slide to talk about her, then we shall. Okay, so look through here for evidence of her, of the way that she thinks. And it doesn't have to be one of these evaluation questions. It can be anything you like. But focus on trying to figure out the way that Sudipta thinks. Let me know what your observations are. And this could be constructive feedback, it could be positive feedback, whatever you want. It would be nice though, come on. She'll probably see this video later. Hey, any observations? Yeah. Shathura, right?
Yeah, so I've been getting like mixed reviews about this when I had my portfolio and reviewed by someone, but like I had to cut down a lot of my text content.
Oh, yeah.
So this, one of the case studies kind of reminded me of that. Which could be a good thing.
That's the one I struggle with case studies and being brief. I have a hard time, and in real life, I have a hard time telling short stories. I gotta get more essentials. Yeah, that's a good one. Other observations?
I'm not sure which one out of the case studies that you want.
Oh, Colin, I'm sorry. I was supposed to give you a specific one. Let's look at the climate control one.
I think to his point, that is a good comment. Just trying to know which one to.
Yeah, I thought we were just looking at the site. I
Oh.
knew we were diving into a case study right away.
That might be good for her to make it a little bit more obvious. This is the one that I want you to focus on. Because like she got that one in there, it's a little bit more about like her illustration abilities. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, let's look at that climate component, Victoria. That's good. I want people who aren't coming from UX design.
Yeah, I'm coming from manufacturing, so it's very
Awesome, awesome.
Are we looking at her portfolio and maybe what we think about it, or are we looking, like, what's the goal here?
Just what you think about it, yeah. Like answer some of these questions for yourself. So for example, do you see any mention in there of measurable improvement? If not, that could be an issue. How did she overcome any challenges she faced? Do you see evidence that she faced challenge? Things like that. See anything like that in there? Yeah.
So just on the example of the climate prediction, taking like the perspective of a recruiter, I really want to see the outcome of like what my work is on. And it's not necessarily clear to me what that is catching that.
And I'd imagine since this is a non-ideal deal, she's going to need to maybe take that to another step. Maybe test it with some people, maybe establish a baseline for how people were doing with this app before and after she made some recommendations. So I think that's a good comment. Yeah. Good stuff. Yes, Matt, right? Is it Matt?
Yes.
Awesome.
One thing that I still continue to do back on my side is in the very beginning of any more part of that show is make sure I'm hitting on the question, why should somebody else care about this? Why should I care? So as always, you do this like add for you do this in the first study, but just having that like in the very top, it hits on like the storytelling part that I know myself I'm still trying to get better at, but at the same time, there's no hook.
Yeah.
There's no, there's some of that in here, but I gotta scroll down to like the word that's probably the solution, is the title, the secondary title, and then, you know, bullet points. And
Yeah.
I just have to go too far into it. Yeah.
What could Sedipta do to front load a hook? Like, how could she make the hook more noticeable?
She can call it out. She can just call it out, like say something. Why does this matter?
Why does this matter? Yeah.
Or give me some quick insight into the people behind this. It's like I still, it's a government climate prediction site. Are there people involved in this? I'm sure there are. Who's that person? Tell me a quick little story about them. Why I should immediately have some empathy for what it is they're doing and why it's a problem and what you do to kind of solve it.
Man, so much of what you said just gets right at the heart of what I'm trying to communicate. Yeah, why do I care? And how is this going to have an effect on other human beings? I think that is critical. Yes?
Most of your slides are about like culture, right?
Mm.
Make people care through stories. There was one, like, something else we were talking about like foods, right? And I was like, oh, it's gonna be kind of boring, we'll look at how this food works. But at the very beginning, I had like one or two sentences about a silly little situation about a sleep. And that made it so, like, I understood the people who were writing the article, knew who they were talking about, I knew what they were talking about because they reversed it, but it like really made me want to keep reading. So it's just a very, very, very short story. And very saying, this is what this article is about, this is why we should care.
Yeah, stories are something that I think that we connect to on a very primitive sort of level as human beings. There's something about that we communicate with each other in stories. We understand and empathize with each other through stories. It's such a good book. It's a really good way to keep reading. Cool. All right, I want to make sure we have enough time for this last one, so let's do that really quickly. This is Stone Segala, who is joining us, it looks like, remotely. So, man, please be nice. But hey, let them know what you think. I'm sure you'd appreciate that too. Stone Segala, there is the QR code, and this time it will take you directly to a case study. I apologize for that last one. And according to my time timer, I only got about 3 minutes left because I gave myself an additional 2 minutes. Okay, so jump in there. And this time we're going to focus on the real skills analysis. For Stone, I just want you to focus on evidence that he is applying real skills. There was one thing, one recommendation that I had for him that jumped right out at me, and I'd be curious if that same thing jumps out for you. But anyway, I'll go through a couple of these slides again so you can remind yourself what some of the questions are. Do they go the extra mile? They got that first from learning? Do they play a wide range of roles? Were they a general or a foot soldier? Were they an ideal team player? That even makes some text and illustrations. Did they provide enough information for you to understand their process? Did they make you care? Man, that's a big takeaway for today. Do I care about your case study? What are the stakes? Okay, anyone have any thoughts? Yeah, what's your name?
Jeff.
Jeff.
Yeah. Yeah, good, thanks. So one part that sticks out to me is the headline, constantly playing whack-a-mole. And he talks about how if you were a developer, every time you had to change one part of the website, you was going to break another part. I think he really brings out the empathy. He says how frustrating that would be if you had to change anything, but you just don't want to break it. It's this fragile, delicate thing. So I think that was very effective in communicating the problem and illustrating how you've got to fix it by creating a design system of standards so that developers don't feel like they can't touch it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think whack-a-mole is an analogy that is universally understood and empathized with, for sure. Yeah, very good. What else? Yes?
So like the headline definitely pulled me in at first, but
Isn't that a great headline, though?
yeah,
Love that headline.
I like it, but it didn't hit me like, I was just like, okay, I got to read why $800,000.
Okay.
But then I get on the accessibility aspect of it, which then really kind of drew me in.
Okay.
And for me, it's like, I want to see that word accessibility built into that title. Like, how us looking into accessibility ended up saving us $800,000 or something. That like ties into it's just a number.
I see.
That's really high, and not having the context of it, I may or may not want to dive into it.
I see.
The accessibility part is so huge to me because it's so true that I want to see that tied into this. That to me, if I was like, if I owned a website or a company and I knew that was in the back of my head, but I wasn't taking it seriously, reading how lull in looking into accessibility saved us $800,000, that's my hook, so to speak.
I like, too, that he is focusing on one aspect of his work. He's not trying to say, here's all the many, many things that I did. Like, that's a little bit too cookie cutter. He's saying, here's what I did for accessibility. That's good storytelling, I think. Yes. I've just been reminded that I'm type. Okay, I will provide. Why don't we do just one more comment, and I'll just leave a couple of minutes for questions. Any more comments on this one? Maybe I could just bring up the one that I had thought of. What's the most common pronoun that you see throughout? You saw I. Okay, you saw it as well. I mean, whether or not it was intended that way, that felt very me-centric, and thus not particularly humble. And I'm sure he was very, very humble as part of this process. It just doesn't feel like it as part of the storytelling. It's something that stood out to me.
Also doesn't show collaboration.
Yeah. I started looking through there for evidence of collaboration. I only saw a couple little bits about areas where we collaborated. And other than that, it was a lot of, I did this, I did that. So if Stone, if you're listening, and I think you are, I would recommend looking for opportunities to talk more about the actual collaboration that you did. Because, then it looked like an ideal team. Okay, so we have just a couple minutes left. Are there any just general questions for me? Yeah.
Sort of going on with what you observed, is it useful or appropriate to have different sorts of languages in the mix? Not like speaking like our languages or we languages or you languages. We're like giving different points. Like I did this, you did this, you should incorporate this.
So you're talking about tone of voice, or more specific to trying to include others in your verbiage?
Trying to include others, but should it be the entire case study or whatever you're doing? should all be centered around one. I guess, like, if you say I, you should keep it I the entire time, or should you have a section that's I did this, you should.
I would say, that's a good question. I would say that you need to be accurate with what you did in the project. If it really wasn't I think, obviously it's okay to say I guess what the point that I would have is just it's important to look for those opportunities and to highlight them when it really wasn't me. Because collaboration is so essential for what we do. So, it's a good question. I mean, if it was a crap question, I'd still call it a good question. That really was a good question. Matt, would you?
I was curious, is the slides you provided today maybe available? And the reason I ask that is because I know this was kind of directed at how to spot others UX talent, but I was doing this whole thing for me because I'm not a architecture for myself, so I just kind of reversed it.
That's cool.
And, I was paying attention to a lot of things again as I was reading, and I was thinking like, oh, I need to kind of go back and circle back to that.
Yeah, we'll make the deck available to you. For sure. Which reminds me, one more thing here. If you would like the deck made available to you, go to, oh, you see this slide? I was going to make someone do it on the spot, but we're out of time, so I won't. All right. This is STG's Ask the Expert page. Super easy if you don't want to scan it. It's stgconsulting.com/ask. This is awesome. It's a free service from STG. You can ask not just me, but any of our experts, any question that you want. No obligation. We're not going to hassle you. Just call and ask us. We want to connect with the community. I'm also going to prepare something of a Decoding UX Talent white paper. And in this, I'm going to have our favorite interview questions. So this, I've got a lot of questions that you can ask yourself about an interviewee. I'm going to provide some interview questions that you can ask the interviewee during the interview. And then I'll also provide the source material, including the UX and hiring for UX positions. So stgconsulting.com/ask, and you just kind of select me. Tell me what you want. You just want the white paper, that's cool. You want to ask me questions, man, I'd love to connect to you. And then finally, thank you so much, guys. This has been so much fun, and I've learned as I prepared, as the presenter always does. And man, keep supporting prototype activities and keep coming out, because I'm really looking forward to learning from you. So thank you so much.